Wyoming Territory, spring of 1878. The wind carried grit across the dry main street of Hemsley, a town that had made up its mind about Naomi Reddin before she ever had a chance to speak. She stepped out of the mercantile with her arms full of flour and soap, eyes fixed on the ground. Folks crossed the street to avoid her, whispers trailing behind like snakes in dust. "That's the preacher's shame. Should have left with her baby. Still thinkin' she belongs here?" Naomi kept walking. Her chest ached. Not from their words, she had learned to live with those, but from the silence. No one asked how she managed to get by since her father turned her out 2 winters ago. No one asked about the boy she buried in the frost, or the girl she kept alive with nothing but root tea and prayer. She pushed open the door to her little shack near the edge of town. Inside, her daughter sat on the floor, clutching a doll made from scraps of cloth. "Mama," the girl said, bright-eyed, "I drew a horse." Naomi dropped the sack onto the table and knelt down. "Let me see, Ruthie," she said, smoothing her daughter's hair. The drawing was shaky, all legs and tail, but it looked like freedom. Naomi kissed her daughter's head and whispered, "Maybe someday, baby." That someday showed up on a horse the color of smoke, with eyes like the open sky and a jaw that looked carved from stone. He rode in from the canyon trail just past noon, boots dusty, hat low. No one knew him, but the saloon doors swung open like they recognized him. He asked the barkeep for water, not whiskey, and said his name was Ashford Flynn. Folks just called him Ash. He was gone from the saloon within minutes, walking straight through town like he had somewhere to be. But when he reached the edge, he stopped. Naomi stood on her porch, arms folded, watching him. He tipped his hat. "Ma'am." She narrowed her eyes. "You lost." "No, ma'am." Ruthie peeked from behind Naomi's skirt. Ash spotted her and offered a gentle smile. "Hello, little one." Ruthie grinned. Naomi didn't. "You should move along," Naomi said. "This town's not kind to strangers. Or us." "You have a name?" "Naomi Reddin." His eyes didn't flicker the way others did when they heard it. "Well, Miss Reddin, I reckon I will move along." But first a gunshot cracked the air. Ruthie screamed. Naomi dropped, pulling her daughter close. Ash turned and scanned the street. Down by the livery, a drunken ranch hand hollered at a boy who had tried to steal a biscuit. Another shot wild and high. Ash moved fast. He grabbed the rifle slung across his back and sprinted toward the livery. Naomi stood, heart pounding, watching him disappear into the dust. He came back 10 minutes later, the boy in tow and the ranch hand tied to a hitching post, howling about justice. The sheriff was nowhere. He never was. Ash looked tired as he returned. Naomi gave him a long look. "You always go around rescuing folks no one else wants?" He knelt to Ruthie's level. "You all right, sweetheart?" Ruthie nodded, still clutching Naomi's dress. Ash stood. "I do not rescue people. I just do not walk away when wrong is plain." Naomi hadn't meant to meet his eyes, but she did. They were steady, not curious, not pitying, just seeing. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I am passing through. I heard there was work north of the Bighorns." Naomi nodded. "Then you should keep passing." But he did not. Not that day. Not the next. He came by again with 2 sacks of dried apples and a jar of honey. Said he had too much. Ruthie crawled right into his lap like they had known each other all her life. Naomi watched, arms crossed. "You do not have to pretend kindness. We will not be here long." "You leaving?" "I have been saving for a wagon. Just need a little more." He glanced at the broken fence, the patched roof. "You need more than a wagon. I manage." "You should not have to." Her eyes snapped to his. "Do not feel sorry for me. I do not." He said it in a way that made her believe him. The third day, She found him splitting wood out back without asking. He fixed the leak in her roof. He taught Ruthie how to skip stones at the creek. And somehow, Naomi found herself sitting beside him at dusk, sharing the only coffee she had left. Everyone here thinks I am something I am not. Ash looked at her. What are you, then? She hesitated. A mother. That is all that matters. You are more than that. No one else thinks so. I do. She looked down at her hands. She hated how her heart swelled at the words. The next evening, she found a note on her door, scrawled in hurried pencil. Preacher says you have until Sunday to leave town. Said he will come himself if you do not. Naomi felt the earth tilt. She showed Ash the note. He read it once, jaw clenched. I will be gone before then, she said. I can pack what we need. No, he said. No, I am not letting them run you off. They already have. Ash stepped closer. You want to leave, we go together. I have a horse. I can get another. We ride out by morning. Naomi stared at him. Why would you? Because I see you. You and Ruthie both. You are not unwanted. Not to me. She looked at him for a long time, wind catching her hair. Then she opened the door and said the words that changed everything. Come in. Ash walked inside. By morning, saddlebags were packed and Ruthie was bouncing with excitement. Naomi stood in the doorway, staring at the town that had never given her a chance. Ash stepped beside her. Ready? She looked at him, eyes soft. Yes. He reached out. She took his hand, and they rode away. The first 3 days on the trail passed with little talk, the rhythm of hooves and the hush of wind doing most of the speaking. Naomi rode behind Ash on the second horse he'd bartered for with a silver pocket watch and a promise to deliver a message north. Ruthie rode tucked snug between her and the saddle horn, head resting against Naomi's chest when she napped. They followed the Sweetwater River west, keeping off the main trail. Ash knew the land with the quiet assurance of someone who'd lived more years outside than in. He pointed out cottonwoods that meant water, tracks that meant elk, and once, a bent sapling he said marked where a Cheyenne hunting party had passed days before. On the fourth evening, they made camp near a stand of willows. Ash built the fire low and careful, using dry pine needles and a twist of birch bark. Naomi unpacked cornbread wrapped in oilcloth and slices of dried apple from the saddlebag he'd handed her that morning. Ruthie sat cross-legged beside the fire, tracing circles in the dirt with a stick. Are we going to a real house? Naomi glanced at Ash before answering. We'll find a place, somewhere with trees and no one telling us we don't belong. Ash didn't look up from where he was rolling out a bed tarp, but his voice came steady. My brother's widow has land near Buffalo. She's alone now, but there's space. She'll take you in. Both of you. Naomi blinked. You didn't say anything about family. She's not blood. Married my brother 6 years before he died. He was the only kin I had left. Ruthie yawned and climbed into Naomi's lap. Ash added, her name's Clara. Keeps chickens and grows beans. Stubborn as all Wyoming, but she's kind. Naomi wrapped her arms around her daughter. And she won't mind strangers showing up? She still keeps my brother's rifle over the door. If she didn't want anyone, I'd know it by now. Silence settled again, broken only by the crackle of pine pitch in the flames. Later, after Ruthie was asleep on the bedroll, Naomi stepped away toward the edge of the trees. She stood with her arms crossed, eyes following the dark line of hills beneath the stars. Ash walked up behind her, his boots soft in the loam. You always stand watch? I listen. Townsfolk don't like that I do, but out here no one tells me to hush. He looked out where she was looking. What do you hear? Water under stone. An owl hunting. Coyotes, far off. Ash nodded. You listen the way a tracker does. I had to. She hesitated. When Ruthie was sick, there were nights I didn't close my eyes. Her breathing would hitch, and I'd sit up, thinking that was the end. Ash didn't interrupt. I used to pray, she added, voice lower now. But I think God stopped listening after I buried the first one. He didn't say anything for a long while. Finally, he said, maybe he didn't stop. Maybe he just knew you were strong enough to keep going. Naomi laughed once, bitter and quiet. Strong don't keep you warm. Ash took off his coat and draped it around her shoulders without a word. She stiffened, then let it settle. You always do that? Give when no one asks. Not always. What makes me different? He looked directly at her, moonlight catching the scar beneath his cheekbone. You don't ask for anything, but you still give. She turned her face away, swallowing hard. Back at the fire, Ruthie stirred. Naomi moved toward her, but Ash caught her wrist gently. I'll take first watch. She nodded once, then knelt beside her daughter. She didn't see Ash settle by the outer ring of trees, rifle across his knees and eyes scanning the darkness. But in the morning, when she woke, she noticed the fire had never gone out. They reached the edge of buffalo territory 2 days later, passing a small homestead where a woman in a blue apron waved from a porch. Ash waved back. That's Mrs. Tilden. She sends letters east for folks when the post takes too long. Naomi adjusted her grip on the reins. You've been here before. Couple winters. I helped Clara through the worst of the snow. Her youngest didn't live past January. Naomi's voice was quiet. You buried him? Ash nodded. They crested a hill and saw the cabin soon after, timber walls, a sod roof, and a smoke trail curling from the chimney. A dog barked once and then fell quiet. A woman stood in the doorway, her skirt fluttering in the wind. When they rode into the yard, Clara stepped down from the porch and hugged Ash without a word. Naomi stayed on her horse, watching. Clara looked up at her. You're welcome here. Both of you. Ash helped Ruthie down first. Then he offered his hand to Naomi. She didn't hesitate. That night, they sat around Clara's kitchen table, light from a single oil lamp pooling across the wood. Ruthie fell asleep with her head on a folded quilt. Clara poured coffee, strong and unsweetened. Naomi lifted her cup. Thank you for having us. You're not the first who needed land and quiet. You won't be the last, Clara said. Ash didn't speak much. He just watched Naomi, his fingers resting near hers on the table. When the lamp flickered low, Clara stood. There's a spare room. Needs airing, but it's warm. Naomi helped carry Ruthie to bed. When she came back to the main room, Ash was still sitting by the fire, boots off, long legs stretched toward the hearth. She didn't speak. He looked up at her. You all right? I will be. She sat beside him on the rug, the silence wrapping around them like a second quilt. Ash didn't touch her, but his presence said more than hands ever could. Naomi leaned back against the wall, eyes half closed. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to listen for danger. She just listened to the fire. And to the man beside her, breathing steady, like he planned to stay. The first frost came early that year, dusting the tops of the foothills in white by the second week of October. Naomi woke before the sun and pulled the wool blanket higher up Ruthie's back, careful not to disturb her. Clara's spare room was small, but it held warmth in the floorboards and didn't creak with every step. Downstairs, the stove already glowed. Ash stood with sleeves rolled to his elbows, slicing strips of salt pork into a pan. He didn't look up when she entered, just said, "Coffee's on the back burner." Clara traded for chicory, but it still does the job. Naomi poured herself a cup. You always cook before daylight? I sleep light, he said. Old habit. She leaned against the doorway, watching the way his hand moved with the knife steady, unhurried. You ever think about stopping? His eyes lifted to hers. From what? Whatever kept you moving before? Ash didn't answer right away. I used to think stillness meant failure. Like if I stopped too long, something would catch up. Naomi ran her thumb along the rim of her cup. And now, I'm starting to think maybe it ain't so bad to be caught. Outside, Clara's hens were stirring, scratching at the frozen crust of earth. Ruthie's soft footsteps came from upstairs, followed by the creak of the stair rail as she descended with a wool shawl wrapped around her shoulders. "Mama, there's frost on the window," she said, eyes wide. "Does that mean snow's coming?" "Soon enough," Naomi said, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. Ash handed her a tin plate. "Best eat while it's hot." Clara came in from the barn with wind in her cheeks and a fresh pail of milk. She set it down, eyeing the low-hanging clouds. "If we want that lean to finished before the cold sets in, we'll need to get the last of the boards up today." Ash nodded. "I'll work the north side. Naomi, you good with a hammer?" She met his gaze. "I built my last stove platform out of crate wood and fence nails. I'll manage." Ruthie tugged on her sleeve. "Can I help too?" Naomi bent down. "You can hand me nails, and maybe pick out the straight ones." The lean-to stood half-built beside the barn, its frame braced into the earth with ash poles and timber salvaged from a half-fallen fence. While Clara worked the back garden rows, Naomi and Ash climbed the ladder and set the last of the roof supports. Ruthie squatted in the dirt below, sorting nails with the seriousness of a banker counting coin. Ash passed Naomi a length of board. Their fingers brushed as she took it. "Clara said you came from Missouri," he said, steadying the plank. "Jefferson County. My father preached in a church with a cracked bell and a crooked steeple. Folks said he could call down fire if he wanted to." Ash held the nail while she drove it in. "Did he?" "No. But he called down shame easy enough." The hammer paused in her hand. She stared at the sky, where two hawks circled above the trees. "I used to dream about climbing that steeple and seeing clear to the Mississippi. And now, I don't dream much these days." Ash handed her another board. "Might be time to start again." By late afternoon, the last board was nailed, and the roofline stood straight. Ruthie clapped when the final piece went up. Clara came from the garden, brushing dirt from her hands. "That should hold through winter." Naomi climbed down the ladder, stretching her back. "Not bad for a day's work." Ash looked at her, something quiet and certain in his face. "You build things strong." That night, after supper, Clara took Ruthie upstairs to show her how to mend a tear in an apron. Naomi stepped outside to shake breadcrumbs from the dish towel, but she didn't come back in right away. Ash followed, letting the door fall shut behind him. The stars were sharp overhead, sky clear after the day's chill. Naomi leaned against the porch post, arms folded. Ash stood beside her, not touching. "You thinking of leaving?" "No," he nodded. "I never meant to stay anywhere again," she said. "But Ruthie sleeps through the night here." She laughs more. "That matters." "It does." Naomi turned toward him. "And you? What is it you want now?" Ash's voice was low. "I want to stop running. I want to build something that lasts longer than a winter. I want to wake up and know who I'm waking up beside." Naomi didn't speak for a long time. Then, softly, "You'd build that with someone like me?" He looked at her without hesitating. "Only with someone like you." She stepped forward, her hand finding his, their fingers laced, rough and warm. Inside, Clara's voice rose in a gentle hum, some old lullaby Naomi didn't recognize. The porch light flickered from the kitchen window, and the scent of dry sage hung in the air. Naomi leaned her head gently against Ash's shoulder. He tilted his face into her hair. For the first time in years, she wasn't waiting for the ground to fall out from under her. She had both feet planted, a warm hand in hers, and the wind carried no threat, only promise. The wind had turned sharper by the end of the month, carrying the brittle scent of drying leaves and wood smoke. Naomi stood at the edge of the garden patch, pulling up what remained of the carrots with her hands wrapped in cloth to keep the cold from biting through her skin. Clara's hens clucked behind her, restless with the change in weather. Ash was in the pasture with a pitchfork, spreading straw across the lean-to floor for the stock Clara expected to trade for before winter deepened. Ruthie sat on a flat stone nearby, threading dried corn husks together with a piece of twine, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. Naomi moved slower than usual, her back stiff from sleeping near the drafty wall. Clara had mentioned fetching more chinking to seal the worst of the gaps, but the wagon had broken a spoke, and the nearest wheelwright lived nearly a day east. Naomi straightened up, brushing dirt from her palms. "You'll catch frost in your cheeks sitting still like that," she said to Ruthie. "I'm making a doll," Ruthie replied, not looking up. "Clara said they don't feel cold." Naomi smiled faintly. "Even so. Come help with the last row before your fingers freeze off." Ash joined them as the sun began to sink. A line of straw stuck to his sleeve. "You've got a visitor," he said, glancing toward the road. Naomi followed his gaze. A man on a chestnut mare approached slowly, wrapped in a buffalo coat, his hat pulled low. As he drew closer, she saw the badge pinned at his chest, dulled with wear. "Marshall," Ash said quietly. The man dismounted near the porch and tied his horse to the rail. "Name's Delaney," he said, voice rough. "I'm looking for a woman fitting your description. Been asked to carry word from Jefferson County." Naomi stiffened. "What kind of word?" Delaney reached into his coat and unfolded a letter, yellowed and creased. "Your father passed last month. Heart gave out during sermon. His effects were left to the county, but a parcel was marked for you should you be found." Naomi's lips parted slightly. "I hadn't thought his name would ever cross my path again." Delaney nodded once. "Didn't think it would matter, but the parcel had your boy's name written on it. Thought you should know." She took the letter with both hands, fingers tight on the edge. "Thank you." Delaney tipped his hat, then looked to Ash. "You keeping them safe?" Ash didn't blink. "I am." The marshal mounted up again and disappeared down the trail before the sun had fully dipped behind the ridge. Naomi didn't open the letter right away. She waited until Ruthie was asleep later that night, curled beside the fire with her husk doll tucked beneath her chin. Then she stepped outside, the lantern light catching the edge of the wax seal. Ash followed after a moment, settling beside her on the porch bench. "You want me to stay?" "I don't know what it says," she said, voice steady. "But if it's something meant for the past, I don't want it dragging me back." He stayed quiet, waiting. She broke the seal and unfolded the paper slowly. Inside was a short note in her father's stiff, narrow hand. No apology, no warmth, only a line for Ruth if she lives, and if her mother still walks among the breathing. Beneath the letter, wrapped in the same faded cloth that had once swaddled her son, was a wooden carving, a shepherd with a lamb over his shoulders, rough-hewn, the face unfinished. Naomi let out a breath that sounded like the end of something. "He carved this for the boy," she said. "Said it was for him to hold when he was old enough to know the stories. I thought he'd burned it. Told me he wouldn't have a bastard child bearing witness in his house." Ash reached out not to take it, just to let his hand touch hers. "He kept it." She looked at him, eyes unreadable. "Maybe he didn't know what to do with guilt." Ash nodded. "Most men don't." She folded the cloth back over the carving and set it on the bench beside her. "Do you want to send word back?" he asked. "No," she said. "Nothing there for us." They sat in silence, the cold deepening around them. Naomi turned to him after a while. "I used to think I was only what he said I was. that I'd never be worth more than the worst thing that happened to me. Ash didn't let her look away. You're not just worth more. You're whole. Even with the cracks. She studied him, and something long guarded in her face shifted, softened. I don't want to leave anymore, she said. His jaw flexed slightly, the only sign of what those words meant to him. Then stay. Let's build something of our own. She reached for his hand, and this time, she didn't hesitate. Inside the cabin, firelight flickered across the walls, casting shadows that didn't frighten. The air smelled of wood smoke and thyme, of bread left to cool on the hearth. Ruthie stirred in her sleep, murmuring something only she could understand. Naomi leaned into Ash and closed her eyes. She didn't need to listen for danger now. Only the sound of his breath beside hers, and the quiet promise of a life unfolding, one steady moment at a time. The first snow came gentle, drifting down on a wind that carried no urgency. Naomi stood at the window, Ruthie in her arms, both watching the flakes gather on the fence posts and settle soft against the bare limbs of the cottonwood beyond the barn. The hush of it filled the cabin like a blessing. Ash returned just before dusk, his coat dusted white and his boots heavy with mud. He stamped them clean on the porch and stepped inside with a quiet nod. His eyes met Naomi's, and she saw something settled in them that hadn't been there before, like the part of him that had always lived on the edge of goodbye, had finally sat down and unpacked his things. The wheelwright came through, he said, hanging his coat. Said he can fix the wagon if we bring it in before the creek ices. I told him we weren't going anywhere. Naomi shifted Ruthie's weight against her hip. You sure? Ash stepped close and reached out to tuck a stray curl behind Ruthie's ear. I've never been more sure of anything. That night, while Clara slept upstairs and Ruthie curled beneath her quilt, Naomi and Ash sat beside the hearth, the lamp turned low. He held a square of linen in his hands, working careful stitches with a needle and thread, his brow furrowed in concentration. You sewin' something? Naomi asked, her voice touched with surprise. Ash didn't glance up. Mending the hem on that dress of Ruthie's, the purple one. She tore it coming down from the hayloft. Naomi tilted her head. You didn't mention it. She asked me not to. Said she wanted to fix it herself but didn't want you to see it before it was done. Naomi folded her hands in her lap, watching the fire catch gold in his hair. You're good with her. Ash looked over then. I didn't know if I would be. I never had brothers with children. Just me and my brother, and we were always moving. She trusts you. He set down the needle and met her gaze. I trust her. And I trust you. She didn't reply right away. Instead, she reached out, laying her hand atop his. His fingers curled around hers without hesitation. I've been thinking about building something out back, she said. A small shed, somewhere to store Clara's preserves and the tools we keep tripping over. Ash nodded. We'll build it together. I want to stay, she added softly. Not just for the winter. I want to plant here in the spring. I want to see what this land looks like when it greens. Ash's thumb brushed the back of her hand. Then we'll stay. We'll plant roots so deep nothing can shake us. They didn't speak again for a long while, just sat with hands clasped, the fire warming their feet and the soft sound of snow tapping against the window pane. By the start of December, Ash had finished framing the shed. Naomi helped him raise the walls, her sleeves rolled and her hair pinned back with a length of twine. Ruthie carried nails and hummed to herself, content in the crisp air. Clara watched from the porch, her arms crossed and her eyes unreadable, but her mouth softened with something close to approval. One morning, Ash asked Naomi to walk with him beyond the pasture, where the land sloped down toward the river that bordered the far edge of Clara's homestead. The snow was ankle-deep, but the sun had returned, bright and cold. They reached a stand of red willow, and Ash stopped beside a shape covered with canvas and twine. He pulled the cloth away to reveal a bench made from split cedar, its surface smooth, the edges carved with care. Naomi touched the backrest with her gloved hand. "You made this. I wanted you to have a place to sit and look. A place that's yours." She sat slowly, her breath steaming in the air. "It's beautiful." Ash stood beside her, quiet for a moment. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his coat and drew out a ring. It was simple, two small braided bands of brass, the kind a man could make with patience and fire. "I've wandered a long time," he said, "but this is the first place I've wanted to stay. And it's because of you. Naomi, I want to wake beside you every morning the rest of my life. Will you marry me?" She stared at the ring, then at him, her throat working. "Yes," she said. "I will." He slipped it onto her finger. It fit. They kissed beneath the bare trees, snow falling around them like quiet blessing. The wedding was small, held in Clara's kitchen with a pair of neighbors as witnesses and Ruthie standing between them, clutching a ribbon of blue cloth. Clara baked a honey cake, and Ash wore a clean shirt Naomi had mended by hand. They spoke no vows beyond what mattered. "I will, I do, I promise." Afterward, they danced to the scratch of a fiddle one of the neighbors brought. Ruthie laughed until her cheeks flushed bright, and Clara smiled more than Naomi had ever seen her smile before. That night, long after the others had gone and the house had gone still, Naomi lay beside Ash beneath the quilt she'd pieced through autumn. His hand rested against her hip, gentle and sure. "This is home," she whispered. Ash kissed the place just below her ear. "Always." Years passed in the shape of seasons. They built a second room off the cabin for Ruthie, who learned to read and took to drawing animals in the margins of every scrap of paper Clara could find. Naomi planted early beans and late squash, and Ash taught Ruthie to ride a pony named Cricket. They welcomed neighbors for harvest and helped bury them in spring. They lost a calf one bitter winter and named a son the following year after Naomi's brother, who had died in the war. Love didn't shout in their house, it lived in the quiet. In the way Naomi reached for Ash's hand each evening. In the way he checked the shutters before sleep. In the way Ruthie's laugh still lit the room. When Ash built a new table, longer this time, Naomi ran her hand over the grain and said, "We'll need more chairs soon." He smiled and said, "Then I best get started."